Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. Hey everyone, welcome to Industry Insights. This is a special episode that was actually recorded live at the Route Consultant Expo in 2026. We're releasing this over time so that if you weren't at the expo, or if you missed the session, or if you're just catching up, these are all coming out over the course of the year so that you can go back and watch this content and make sure that you see everything that we went over at the expo. Today you're going to hear from Amy about the FedEx transition and what they've learned 2 years in.
This session, our last session of the series, is 2.0, 2 years in. So we were in a small contract, and we went live 2.0 October 28th of 2023. So we've been in it a couple times, a couple years, 3 peaks and 2 years. 2 peaks, 3 years. This is our third peak. 23, 24, 25. Yep. This is Mike. Mike is one of my senior managers. Mike is in charge of, he's between Dave and I and our BCs, which are our local managers, right? The guys that run the terminal. So he's one of 4 guys here that we have that do that. So they are the layer that we talk about that runs my business for me locally, or regionally, all my terminals, so that Dave and I don't have to go to the terminals, right? So they're that layer that you may not have at this moment, but as you get bigger and scale, you may need. Mike is also our Doge manager, so he's our Director of Ground Efficiency, and he does kind of just what that sounds like. He kind of goes around and pokes at all of our processes and makes sure that there's efficiencies and that our policies and procedures are being followed to the T. So he's the perfect person for our express integration. Very detail-oriented. He's been with us for 12 years. Started out as a driver, and then went on contingency. Actually got his CDL. Was going to go that route, and then we needed him to come back, and we needed the force and the power on the P&D side. So he stayed with us on that side. So we're going to talk about a little bit about 2.0 in general, and then our journey and kind of what that looks like. I know the buzz, there's positives and negatives. People you'll hear, obviously, from my last few sessions. Lean in, right? We're going to talk about that and how this is a good thing for us. Let's see. Why is this? There we go. So 2.0, and Mike's going to jump in here and there, but he's also going to help with some Q&A. The 2.0 overview, I think the big rub, and somebody just asked me this Tuesday, they said, well, we're going to go 2.0, and I just don't know how FedEx is going to expect my guy that does 200 stops to make 10:30s and noons. And I said, well, they're not. And he said, well, how is my guy going to do 200 stops? I said, well, he's not. Like, it's going to be different, right? He's not going to do 200 stops anymore because he has 10:30s and noons. So, right, throwing out the old playbook and kind of recreating what a new route looks like. So kind of take that initial stress of thinking that you're going to layer 2.0 on top of your current workload as it exists for your individual drivers is just not the case. It's just unrealistic. And FedEx knows that, which is great. So we're going to talk about the differences, the mindset, which I just kind of talked about, transition and learning, expectations, the F word, which is not the word that I say all the time, but it is flexibility. Be flexible, and try not to use the F word with FedEx. And then changes to the network, which include redistricting, which I know is a term that people are getting kind of scared about. CSA review or takeover, kind of like the flip that some of the contracts had in Canada. So redistricting, I've gotten a lot of questions about this. What happens when you carve out a piece of my area, or FedEx is talking about moving this zip code and giving me more of this area, and I don't know what that looks like. So that's what redistricting looks like. And then CSA review. If you are not servicing your customer today, you probably aren't in a good standpoint to take on 2.0, right? So you kind of need to get your ship in order, if you will, because it's going to get, there's going to be higher expectations in a 2.0 terminal. Slicker's 2.0 experience from 10/28/23. If you know what happens in late October, again, we talked about our line haul launch in November 22nd, years ago. And of course, we take over 2.0 just 15 days before peak. So that was a learning curve for all of us. We had to add net plus resources, right? We obviously knew we had to add more drivers and more trucks. The FedEx expectations, Mike, can you talk about a little bit of those, just the expectations from FedEx in a 2.0 terminal that's different, than in a regular standard terminal?
So in the 2.0 stations, they're very strict on the uniforms and the badge. They want your badge shown at all time because it has a TSA sticker that shows that you're compliant with TSA. So the security ramps up, which, security should be good regardless, but they really ramp up the security, check your bags, make sure that TSA compliance, and if you get a new hire, you have to escort them around the terminal until they get compliant with TSA. And they can't pick up any boxes or anything like that until they're TSA compliant.
Yep. And uniforms, very strict. And they will come around. There's TSA and FedEx security that do spot checks throughout the terminal, and they also go on route sometimes.
Yeah. Going back to the next thing there, the security, they can go out on route and make sure your truck's secure. They're going to basically see if they can get into the vehicle if you're not present at the vehicle.
Yep. So there's all kinds of security checks. And it does take a little bit longer to make a delivery, right? If you have to lock the truck and you're not used to locking the truck, you should. But, we're a little bit more loosey-goosey on the standard P&D side. But these are things that you're going to be held accountable to on the 2.0 side. Routing and efficiency. So you can throw efficiency right out the window, right? Because there's nothing efficient about passing a stop to go to another stop and then having to double back to go get it. Can you talk to us a little bit about, Mike, some of the frustrations in passing a stop or not being efficient? So like a hospital delivery and those kind of double back moments.
Yeah. So a lot of the time commitments is depending on the dispatch time. And if there's bad weather, there's bad weather can delay the dispatch, which makes it harder to make your commitments. So there's times where you have 10:30s due, and you might dispatch at 9:45, and you have basically a 15 to 30-minute window to hit your commitments. So for us, an example we like to use is the hospital, which will get 50 to 100 packages. They might have 3 boxes that are 10:30 commitments. We need that driver to hit those 3 boxes and then go to their next commitment, and then come back later and hit the ground. The ground volume, that way, we get the commitments off in the time.
So counterintuitive to efficiency, right? You're at the hospital. You should deliver the boxes, the express boxes and the ground boxes, and possibly even do a pickup. It would make sense if we could do all of that at one time. But if there's 40 or 50 ground boxes, and then you need to get those off, just that 5, 10, 20 minutes that it would take to deliver those can ruin your next express delivery, right? So you need every moment. So you drop those 3 boxes and you book, and you go to another 10:30, and then you book it back to the hospital, and then you book it back to the hospital for the pickup. So it sounds super messy, but again, this is the new norm. I know it seems super counterintuitive to what we talk about with DRO and with ground cloud and with routing efficiency and things like that. And again, this is why the efficiency number, and we talk about that love language, right? The stops per resource are much lower in a 2.0 terminal than they are in a regular terminal, because they know your efficiency is going to be inefficient. And your drivers are going to go nuts about it because it doesn't make sense to have to go back and double back. But it's their workload, and it's going to be a manageable workload. The BC role changes. So, you have your typical BC, especially if you're in a terminal that's not going 2.0 or that was not 2.0 first and then converted to 2.0. Tell us about, so our manager's name is Taylor. She's great. Tell us about what changed for Taylor in protecting service, the time commits, the drivers, and even sweeps and drop boxes. If you could tell us kind of what the drop boxes are and give them some insight.
So her role changed. Not every day is a late dispatch. It's the days that are the late dispatches that get a little bit tougher. And if you know there's a late dispatch coming, because they usually give us a fair warning that we're going to have a late trailer, you may have to shift some of the 1030s to other people, maybe like passer throughs. People who are going to the country routes, maybe we'll give them 1 or 2 1030s. That way it'll help the next driver coming through. So something that she does in the mornings and the supervisor that's there is just making sure that someone doesn't have too many commitments and they're going to complete them. Because we all know that DRO is not completely accurate. So sometimes it may show that driver may only have 6 1030s and they might end up with 9 to 10. And depending on the driver and what they have, we've noticed that, it takes about a half an hour for 5 1030s. So that's where we really pay attention in the morning, making sure that. And then, when we get past the 1030 point, we're making sure that the drivers are going to hit their noons. So a lot of times, drivers will just hit their 1030s and go to their noons and then start their day. And then going back to, just the efficiency, you're just passing up stops at that point, which is a big change for the drivers. Obviously, now we're 3 years in. It's the norm. But it took a long time for some of the drivers really to get used to just, hey, there's a stop, and just go by it, instead of just trying to be efficient as possible.
So a lot of problem solving. And then, so the next one we actually talk about being flexible with call-ins and drop boxes. So talk about what a call-in is, and then hit what the drop box looks like.
So there's a lot of call-in pickups throughout the day. It'll just pop up. We've noticed that it happens to be a lot of the same ones. It's usually a doctor's office, the hospital, a pharmacy, the Walgreens pharmacy, the grocery store pharmacy. It typically is everything. So drivers are kind of used to it, that this is going to eventually pop up. And then our team that's in the city where there's a lot of call-in pickups, they work really well together. So they say hey, I'm on the other side of town. Could you grab this? And then the drop boxes was a difference because, we had a lot of just, normal 3 to 5 pickups, maybe a 4. Well, we jumped to those 5 o'clock pickups. So we try to manage drivers not having to be out till 5 every day. And maybe if there's 3 city guys, 1 person rotates throughout the 5 o'clock pickups throughout the day. And then with the sweeping that Amy mentioned, expresses due back at our terminal by 6 p.m. So if you have a guy who has a later day out and he has express in his truck, that express is expected to be back by 6. So if someone else is going to be done sooner, we need them to grab that express off that driver's truck and take that back to the terminal. And that's a big hurdle that we have during peak. It's an everyday occurrence where we have someone sweeping trucks to get the express volume back, because we can't just send one truck to do all the express volume, because then at that point they're doing no deliveries. They would just be doing pickups.
So a lot of problem solving, a lot of communication, but the role has definitely changed. It is almost impossible for our manager to be in a truck in that terminal, right? Because there's a lot of pieces. So for her to be in a truck and doing a full route for a call-off is almost detrimental, because she's got her own route to do, right? And then she's also kind of managing and dispatching. So the next one we talk about is managing your business. Remember that there are expectations that FedEx sets, but it is your business to run. Okay, so when we first started, FedEx told us it's peak, you're going to be better off if you just run overlapped, right? Which we all know what that was from in home delivery and ground, which is where you just run business as usual with ground, and then you layer express on top of it. We did that for 3 days, and Mike was like, nope, that doesn't work for us. This makes no sense. We're not hitting time commits. Everybody's everywhere. We're passing trucks. It was just getting super messy. So we decided immediately to integrate. So every single one of our trucks is overlapped. It's ground and 2.0. And what we did is we just kind of condensed the routes, right? So if they were at 120 stops a day, now they might be at 100 stops a day. And then that slice of the network does they would do their pickups in that, or their time commits in that smaller route. So then we just kind of carved things in, which ended up having some growth opportunity. We've had a couple different types of growth in the 2.0 terminal. The first type was volume, right? And as I mentioned earlier, 2.0 growth is great because those are small boxes. Like, don't fight it, right? We're getting enough of the big boxes, so welcome the small ones, even if it comes with a time commit attached to it. So we did grow in volume, which was the volume that we needed. We were at about 900 stops a day. It was a smaller contract that we took. And Mike had been saying for years, I just need like 200 more stops. 200 more stops, and I can add a supervisor, and we can we'd be a lot more efficient. We could put these routes in. It would be just 200 more stops, and we would just be perfect. And the express volume gave us that growth. So we were able to achieve those numbers, kind of the perfect fit for what he needed, the extra 200 stops to bolster the staff and really service the customer and give everybody a manageable day. And then we had additional growth opportunity by growing. They gave us new routes. So there was a local terminal nearby that was not 2.0, but customers that wanted to be serviced 2.0. So they actually redistricted a couple of the routes out of this one terminal and pushed them over into our 2.0 terminal. So they just said, these guys are requiring 2.0 service. They're now in your terminal. They butt up against your area. They're yours. Just gave us the area. So then we grew by 2, and then that grew into 5.
Extra routes.
Extra routes. So then we got another chunk, which was which was different. So when we started 2.0, we didn't have a lot of industrial area in the current contract that we had. So it was kind of a little bit more, I wouldn't say smooth sailing or easy breezy, but it wasn't as difficult as we had expected with this new area that we took on. And if you want to talk about how this new area was different than maybe what you had seen for the 2 years that we had it prior.
So basically, just your bulk of 1030s are in the industrial areas or business areas, because no residentials are getting 1030s. It has to be a business. Residentials are usually knowns. So just the knowing that the business routes have to be a little bit smaller to make these commitments, and for the call-in pickups and those stuff, et cetera, to that point. And then in our terminal, I don't know if someone in the background we have some 11 commitments. So they have 11s and 1230s somehow, which happen to be the ones close to the terminal, and the farther away ones happen to be the 1030s and noons. We're not really sure how that happened, but when they told us we had a half an hour grace on our 1030s, we didn't complain, because that gives us some more time, and that actually gives the driver the capability to have more early commitments, because now she can hit 8 to 10 before 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. Sorry.
So one of the other things is if you're in a rural contract and you're like, delayed, right? Delayed dispatch because the plane has to come in. And then if you're in a snow belt area, you're like, okay, that's going to add a half hour and messiness. And then I have these rural contracts, like we're never getting there at 10:30. Know that FedEx gets that in some of our rural areas, and we're hearing, when we do these sessions and we talk to contractors that are in rural areas, they don't have 10:30s. They only have noons. So they get that you can't get there, right, in negative 15 minutes. We're not going back in time to service the customer. So understand that when we talk about these things, they understand what we're going up against, and they get that their STEM, when we first took over, and they were trying to figure out, even the terminal was trying to figure out things, or we'd have fog from Pittsburgh, that's where our trailers come from. If the weather was delayed, they would give us like 15, 20, 30-minute exemptions. We actually had construction. They were building a gas station at the end of our terminal. They gave us an extra 15 minutes exemption for those deliveries. So it's not as bad. Like, it's not just a hard, do it by 10:30 and there's no workaround. We actually even have our drivers call us sometimes and say, hey, there's an accident. We're not going to get to this by 10:30. And they will give us a call-in exemption. The terminal wants you to be successful, but you have to communicate.
There's a lot of days, too. If you live in a bad weather area like it snowed that day, you'll have a full weather exemption for the day. They ask you to be respectful of time commitments and still try to make them a priority. but you're not held to the standard of it has to be delivered by 10:30 by noon. If you get there at 12:15, 12:30, it's not going to count against you. So the full weather exemption days really make a big difference. And just to add to that, during peak, your 10:30s actually go to noons, and your noons go to 1:30, so which makes a world of difference because now they have all morning to hit those early commitments, and then half and to early afternoon to get the rest of commitments. So that's a big perk during peak that you get that extra time to hit those commitments.
So again, FedEx is has a little bit of understanding as they're pushing out these tighter expectations of us. So the dirt on the differences, the big idea, you'll hear me say this all the time, it's not harder, it's just different. Change is hard. Yeah, take a picture if you guys want to take a snapshot of this. So just to hit these out of the gate, dispatch times and weather challenges, it is tough. If you are in a snow belt or your plane is coming from somewhere that has weather, right? Our plane comes from Pittsburgh, so we get terrible weather into terrible weather. So some of we've had some 11 o'clock days, not very often, but you gotta sit tight when your guys get there at 7 a.m. waiting for stuff. We have tried to get most of our guys to show up at 8 earliest. We do have some, what do we call them, old timers, legacy drivers that just refuse to get there late. They're early birds, so they have a long day. Inefficiency is a thing. We just talked about that. Embrace it. Service is under a microscope. The 2.0 network is driving the new norm of customer service. So service has to be there, right? These time commits, they're no different than pickups. They're like pickups, intensified. Uniforms are mandatory. Top to bottom, badges on your body, above waist. So these are all very, and they're drilled down. They actually grab you in the terminal and they're like, where's your badge? They expect you to be part of that policing as well. If you see someone in the terminal, it's kind of a see something, say something. Trucks need shelves. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So during the COVID time, we invested in a lot of Nissans. They were great at the time. They were reliable. But you have to self-load them. Once we started getting into the 2.0, we can't sort the boxes and get the truck loaded efficient so we can get out at dispatch. So one change that we made right away was actually we had a bunch of cart-loaded routes, and Amy kind of gave them the lowdown that we need loadable spots, and this has to happen before we can do this 2.0 for you. And they invested in more trucks with shelves so they could be loaded. So as soon as that dispatch happens, those guys can roll. There was not time to load those trucks up in the Nissans or a ProMaster or a Transit, anything like that. So it's also a challenge during peak when you have rentals and you just get a Transit or something like that. We try to keep the commitments off of that supplemental route that may be there. That way we don't have to worry about them hitting a 10:30 because we know they're going to be out a little bit after dispatch once we're loading their vehicle up.
If you're in a terminal that does cart loading or does pallet loading or doesn't have rollers, there's belt lines that don't have rollers, that will be an expectation that you have to hold them to. It's not just you that has to be prepared, but the terminal actually has to set themselves up for success as well. So that was the reason also that we were in pallets and cart loading in that area, and we had to make sure that, hey, I bought these trucks. You guys need to invest in the technology. So they had to go get movable belts so that they could have the package handlers load the trucks. Trucks need shelves. Okay, so LP percentage will go down, but the boxes are still there or more. So this is kind of that funny, fuzzy percentage, right? So if large packages are a percentage of your total, and you're getting more large packages, but you're getting also more small packages, the percentage is not going to be true to how many big boxes you are getting, because that percentage is going to get watered down with the growth of the small volume as well, right? So it's going to proportionately increase or proportionately stay the same. So you have to keep an eye. If you need 3 bulk trucks, but the percentage hasn't changed, your percentage of LP hasn't changed, that's the number that FedEx is looking at. You have to paint the picture that even though the percentage is still 10% or 11% or 13%, that I have more big boxes. So you can do that in DRO or FRO by proving cube, right? You can pull those reports, or you can just make a report and write a unique characteristic that says, I need 3 bulk trucks to run this every day in order to meet service. So just keep an eye on that. That percentages are funny. When both numbers move, the percentage doesn't change, right? We talked about call-ins, returns. Mike did talk about those. The drop boxes were a funny thing, right? The scanner opens them.
It was a challenge to open the drop boxes. You get a call consistently on how to get this drop box to open. It just became an issue at first, but now everyone knows how to do it. There's occasional hiccups where the drop box won't open, and if you just get a hold of the CPC, they'll give you a code to unlock the box manually. But other than that, like once we got the hang of it, it's easy.
Yep. So that's kind of like the short straw, right, in our company. Who sweeps the drop boxes because they're 545?
They're 5. Some are 5 and some are 445, depending on the location from the terminal.
So 445, 5 o'clock, that's like a 5 o'clock pickup, right? So nobody likes those, and you have to pick it up at that time because the customer has until that time to get the boxes or their packages in the box. So our guys were like literally wheeling and dealing $20 and a Gatorade, and you can sweep it for me so I can get off work and go to my, I don't care how they did it. Mike was like, are you good with this? And I'm like, until it's broken. Like, I'm good with it until I'm not good with it. So if it's kumbaya and everybody's servicing and they can trade and, work together, but if we start missing things and, it's my turn, you paid me a pack of smokes and a Gatorade to do it, and then something happens or my truck breaks down, then we got to start, then we're going to have to assign them, right? And our team does a really good job of sweeping those and trading off. They're really respectful of each other. Security is no joke. We talked about that. Trucks, locks, and deliveries. Yeah, we've gotten, we've had a box fly off a truck once, and it was a big, we don't have to go into detail, but we, all the things that happen in the P&D side, imagine if that's what was it? It was a bow, like a rifle, right? It was a rifle. So a box fell off a shelf. You can't even make this up. Fell off a shelf, dislodged the side door, opened the door. The box fell out on the side of the road. She turned the corner. The door shut. She had no idea. The box on the side of a road was a gun, right? Like, you can't make this up. And it was a time commitment.
Yeah, but thankfully, a passerby actually picked it up and delivered it to the shop himself.
But it was like, you can't make this up. Like, and we're like watching the video. I'm like, they're like, she just threw it out the door. I'm like, she wouldn't have done that. And to find out that this was kind of the chain of events, Mike's like, watch the box. Like, falls and moves. And I'm like, get the heck out of here.
If it wasn't for the camera, we'd have never believed her. Because it was just in perfect unison. The door opened up, box out, turns, door closes.
It was incredible. But security, no joke. But that was a big thing. It was a really big thing that, we had to go into investigation and all these things to protect her. Personnel, this is a big one. Mediocre staffers will not cut it. If you have half-assers, they will not make it in Express. You need people that care. You also have to make sure that you are setting them up for success. So if they're doing 120 stops today and you load them down with their 1030s and their 12s now, they're not going to be happy. So you have to set them up for success, but mediocrity is not going to work. They have to care. They have to know that they're passing, right? They're being inefficient, and they're driving by and they're like, this makes no sense. Why I'm driving by, I could just stop and deliver it. Like, that's gonna happen, but it's now the new norm for us, right? They know that there's a reason why they have to get to these packages and get back. So it is a huge mindset. One of the questions that people ask is, well, what kind of increase do you give your drivers off the rip to kind of, brace them for the new workload? And as I mentioned, it's not harder, it's just different. The big switch for us, so going back, we were early to 2.0, And I had no idea what this was going to pay. I had no idea what it was going to look like. We didn't even have a contract. They gave us like an SSSC, which was like an additional contract to help buffer the extra expenses. It was so messy, and we didn't have the data. So I was just like, I don't know. I can't give you a raise because I don't even know what the workload's going to be like, right? I don't know if it's going to be less, more, even. I have no idea. So the big hurdle for us is that our people were super efficient and they were able to get done between like 3 and 3:30 every day. So you can imagine with this new type of workload that they weren't getting done at 3:30. So the mindset had to shift, and that had to come from me and Dave. And we had to say, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I promise you, if you are doing more work than you're doing today, not more hours, if you're doing more work than you're doing today, you will be compensated fairly. You have my word. I just don't know what that looks like today. So you got to trust me. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe you get less work, right? But it's express work. I don't know. But the shift was, we expect you to work until 5, so you're welcome for the 3 o'clock days the last 2 years. But that was the huge shift, is that I'm going to expect you to be at work.
Hey guys, we just wanted to pause for a moment to invite you to our free events that are happening throughout the year. Whether you're just getting started in the logistics industry or you're looking to optimize your current operation, Route Consultant has events that are designed specifically for you. So head on over to routeconsultant.com/events or check out our show notes to register for free today. Also, while you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Industry Insights with Route Consultant podcast so that you don't miss out on the stories, the advice, and the updates that are happening throughout the industry. We appreciate you being here and hope to meet you in person soon. Now let's get back to the episode.
So that was, once we got past that hurdle, everything else was good. But I did not do an increase out of the gate. I had an honest conversation with 11 people, and I said, I promise you I will make it right. And it came down to trust, which they have. I had with them. And we didn't move. I think we only moved one person, Casey, he actually is doing 180 stops and doing his commits also because he's just an animal. So he got an increase. Everybody else stayed the same. They got their annual increases at review time, but no one else got more to do this workload because we balanced it and it was fair and manageable. So the guy that was doing 120 is now doing 100 with time commits. Seems pretty fair, right? The workload lessened, got a little bit tricky, a little bit different, but not harder. But he does have to work into, and then again, when they do that swap at the end of the day with who's doing the drop box, right? Sometimes they get an easy day, right? And they work together. I got dinner with my kid. I got this. Can you sweep the drop box for me? So it just worked out well. But just to give you an idea, we didn't hit it and just essentially bribe our employees to hang out and go through it with us, right? We had meaningful conversations about going through change and what this looks like. Contradictions. This is my what the heck slide between what we're hearing and what we're seeing. Small versus large packages, right? They said 2.0 is going to integrate and give us a ton of small packages, but we still have large packages, and that's that percentage. So make sure you're paying attention when you go 2.0 that you put in a bulk truck, right? That's what we've had to do. We have a full bulk truck. Everything's actually routed to the truck. So we build an LP route, large package route, to keep those off of the time commits. It keeps their day a little bit smoother. They can focus on time commits. They're not fighting the boxes. Very smooth. Van line versus cartload. Everything you're going to get much cleaner on, as Mike said, on the pickups and the time commits if you're van loaded. Solo dispatch versus second wave. They actually gave us that option. So what some of the contractors do is, because of the late dispatches, they'll send some of their trucks. They're like, I just can't keep you here, right? You have 140 stops. I got to get you the hell out of the building. So they send them, and then the manager will actually stick around and either shuttle those time commits out to them, or they'll handle them themselves, at least the 1030s, or the exemptions. But that's something that you have to kind of decide on that. Like, is there days that you're just going to say, this guy has to get out of here? Like, I cannot wait for the time commits. He's got to go. What do those days look like for us?
So we've tried a couple different ways of doing this, and we actually just did it on Christmas Eve. The plan didn't work great. So we got word there was going to be a real late dispatch on Christmas Eve. We kind of felt bad for the drivers. There was me, myself, and a supervisor available to deliver, so we decided to cut all the guys. We ended up running into 170 stops of time commitments over our entire CSA between 2 drivers. We had a full exemption because of weather, so we ended up splitting it into between 2 of us and then asked drivers to come to us once they finished their route since they got to get cut out early. We've also heard of people doing buddy systems where one neighboring driver may leave, they'll stay and grab all the commitments for these 2 work areas, and they'll bring their commitments out. And they've also did it before where one manager might wait for the big, heavy commitments routes where it's a full exemption, but you just bring their commitments out to them. So have a, section 432, 430, 428, whatever it is, have those all separated and just drop those off to the drivers. But the second wave, a lot of people tried the second wave, which Amy had mentioned before, of sending ground out and doing express. You just can't make the commitments. If you try to have one person do commitments over 3 or 4 work areas, they just won't make the time commitments, especially if there's multiple 1030s. So at that point, you're just not servicing the customer. So it's important that every truck's integrated.
So those were kind of the hard lessons that we learned. So I think that kind of covers the oopsies, but that's where it points to that BC role is super critical, that they're not in a route already, because one little thing can change in the morning and they are in kind of recovery and rescue mode, right? Do you have anything to add before I?
Just, if there's times where a driver may come in late or they say they're running behind, we may grab like the 1030s off the truck or the noons, and then the manager may just go run those and wait for the driver to come in. Just that way we know, again, we're not missing those commitments. But those are things that we're just always aware of, that the drivers are there on time, and what does that commitment side look like? And if, maybe if there's only one there, we might pull it off and just, again, to a neighboring driver. So we're always paying attention in the morning what those commitments look like. And the terminal actually gives us sheets which shows us which work area has what commitments for the day, and we pay close attention to that.
So we kind of hit the rest of them, efficiency versus time commits, bouncing around a little bit, express only versus integrated, and then pickups versus returns. If you have a pickup heavy route, you're going to need somebody to sweep those returns if they're not going to get back in an orderly time. We also have the express boxes separated.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when you have pickups and have express pickups, FedEx expects you to keep those separate on the truck. So just even like express goes in a corner, because those are going to get offloaded by the package handlers first, because they need to go on a plane and get the heck out of the building, right? And then they'll come back around, also inefficient for them, right? Going back to your truck for a second time, and then they'll unload the ground packages. So just a little, differences there. Breaking it down, 2 years later, a look back into our operation. So this is kind of what our growth looked like. We were overlapped. We have a bulk route. We do sweeps, and we have drop boxes. You can see in 2022, 23, we're kind of flat. And then we got express. We got that little bit of a bump. 2024, we got a work area. 2025, we got another work area. And then at the end of this year, we got even more area with those 5 routes that Mike talked about. So it is good, right? The growth was there. It wasn't immediate. One of the reasons that we got into this terminal is to build a relationship with the line haul. We took line haul in this terminal first, and then they said, hey, we have a contractor that's failing, and we know you guys do P&D. Can you come help us? And as I say, we say yes to the customer. So this actually gave us a small terminal to learn 2.0 in. So it was a great learning, kind of first early adopter, allowed us to learn, allowed us to manage, allowed us to change, and now it's allowed us to grow. So we went from 9 routes to, what are we running now?
16.
16 routes, just in that short amount of time. And then we have the 2.0 integration. A little bit of changes in money, so kind of, I can't go into a ton of detail, but to just give you an idea of how this has changed over the years. In 2023, we had a special service charge. They had no idea how to pay us. We were just like, whatever, we'll figure it out. In 2023, we renegotiated, and the time definite service was based on service. You only got paid the express bonus for the packages that you delivered in the windows, right? So you're still having to deliver boxes, but you weren't getting paid for them. It was great. FedEx figured out that was not the way to do business, and they just started paying us on all time definite. So they just said, we don't care about your service. We get you're out there trying. Here's your bonus. So they gave us a difference. And then in 2025, they baked it in. So it's just part of the contract. Service charge went up, stop charge went up a little bit, and it's all included. So there is no line item. It's very much like large package, where we as analytical thinkers and line item folks want to know that I delivered 45 time commits at 10:30. I want a line item and a price for that. I want to see it on my contract. You won't. It's just part of doing business now. Oh my gosh, so close. And then getting it right and future-proofing your business. This is what, if you are not 2.0 or you're buying into a non-2.0 contract, this is what I would ask you to do today. It's very hard to negotiate change if you don't know what you're doing today, if you don't understand what your service looks like today and what your contract looks like today. So get it right today, right? Make sure that your stops per resource, your resource counts, everything is in line today. Because if you are running too many resources today and they come and they look and they say, oh, hey, you were supposed to be at 10 resources and we think you should be at 12 with Express, you're like, but I'm already at 12, so I need 14. That conversation gets super messy. If they say you should have 10 resources and you think you need 12 today, renegotiate and make sure that that new contract before 2.0 reflects what you're doing today. So get all your numbers right today so that when you do go 2.0, that change can be applied to what seems correct. Does that make sense? So you're not like undoing and then redoing. It just gets super messy. And that's where 2.0 contracts seem to go wrong. So make sure your PCAT and money are in line today. I did put all the different work area compositions that you should look at. Make sure your trucks are right, your routes, resources, stops are right, your percent of bulk, make sure you're checking on that. Know your businesses and hospitals. So know that if you have an industrial area, you are going to be 2.0 heavy, right? Versus a small town that maybe only has a couple businesses. Think about the types of businesses that need 2.0. Right? And then you can kind of get an idea. So businesses, schools, doctor's offices, right? If you have a lot of those on your routes today, you're going to feel it more than maybe the other guy that's just like a rural contractor. So just keep an idea. Know what your CSA composition looks like today. We are at, mileage and data. Just keep an eye on that. So if you have a lot of rural routes, you probably won't have 1030s, but know that data so that when you go into negotiations for 2.0, you have it ready for them, right? We sat down at our 2.0 negotiation, and the engineers sat there with their laptop, and I brought out my laptop and a stack of papers about this thick, and they were like, oh. I'm like, yeah, we're here to have a conversation. And I had everything I needed, and we left there with the contract that we needed. So you make sure that you have all these data points, current stops per week and per day, know all this, so that when they refer to something, you're like, no, it's actually not that, it's this. So you can contradict them or agree with them. Your current dispatch times, know what those are, ask them what they're going to be. Expectations, current pickups and current returns. And then predict and forecast your 2.0 impact. Obviously, you're not going to know everything perfect, but like I said, if you know that you're in a hospital dense or industrial dense market, you can kind of have an idea that, okay, there's 4 hospitals and a bunch of doctor's offices. I know for a fact I'm going to have 20 pickups or 20 express deliveries on this route specifically. And then, exponentially higher based on the ones that you don't know that get express deliveries. And then review your staff. Yes? I'm sorry?
Did you receive any money for CapEx?
And then review your staff. So you're going to want to review one-on-ones or in a group, like I said. Get that first meeting when they start saying, like, hey, it's coming. Don't let them hear it from the contractor next door or, doc talk. Don't let them be the last ones to know. If you're hearing something, communicate it to them. Reassure them that it's not going to shake the baby and that you're going to work with them to make some changes. You can tell them, this is what I learned at a conference, right? That it's not harder, it's just different. We're going to make the right moves. But review your staff. If someone is already negative about it and they're like, I'm not doing this, I don't want to do it, start hiring, right? You need to make sure that the team that you have on board is ready to service the contract in this new landscape. And then when you get the offer, here's some questions to ask. Is it what they told you, right? Is this what you predicted? Go back to the prep work you conducted. How is it different? What is the resource and truck impact? They had told us 2, or they told us 3. We only needed 2 more. So that was a net positive for us. Run comparisons, communicate discrepancies, get buy-in from the terminal if there's anything funny. We talked about that in the renegotiation session. And then just have your numbers, the why, the how, and then the fear of the unknown. It's going to happen, and they're going to get it wrong. We have renegotiated our 2.0 contract in the first year. So coming out of peak that year, we renegotiated it 3 times. One of it was due to FedEx's request, like they got it wrong. Again, we were early on, right? So we were kind of at the early adopter stage. So they were kind of figuring things out. They're much more streamlined and experienced as we are. But don't be afraid to accept the contract, get the data, learn, and then renegotiate. So don't be afraid of that. I think it's literally 70% of 2.0 contracts renegotiate in the first year. So don't be afraid. It's going to happen, but know that you can do that. Any other questions about 2.0 or about, if it's about money, you can hit me up sideways over here. Yes. Are we good on time? We're good on time?
So you did get enough money to be less efficient?
Yes. So, end of story. Last question. Very good point. We are making more money. This was good for business. Excellent for business. That line was not just growth, that was revenue. Okay? Profitability was up also. Yes. Yeah. It was good for business. Yeah, more packages, more small packages, growth. Again, Mike had mentioned we had the smaller routes, right? But we had to cover the geography. With 2.0, it gave us more density. So we were able to put more boxes on some of the routes, even though the routes were smaller. And then just that growth area gave us the extra stops and area to kind of put that second manager in and manage the business better. So everything just started flowing better. So 2.0 has been good for business.